What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and this is the mid-year book freakout tag. Freakout book tag? Anyways, I was tagged by Adam at Memento Mori, as well as Alex from What Page Are You On? Thank you, gentlemen. And first of all, let me just say that I've been watching a lot of these videos, and you guys are all taking this way too seriously. Like, first of all, the freakout thing, I believe, is because it comes from YA BookTube, where like freaking out is just sort of the baseline emotional state. That's, you know, like you don't literally have to freak out in this video. And then we'll get to question 8 when we get to it. But yeah, you guys are overthinking that too. And coming from me, like I like to overthink things, so you know. Get a grip, everybody. Okay, let's just jump in. The first question, and I didn't write these down verbatim, so, you know, whatever. You can go in the description box and see exactly how they're, you know, supposed to be read. But first of all, the best book I've read so far in 2019, that is The Golden Mean by Annabelle Lyon. I think I talked about this one already in a tops and flops type video that I did, but yeah, so far nothing has really touched it. It's historical fiction about Aristotle and Alexander the Great, and like, I don't know. I don't know if anything's going to touch that one. It was, I really didn't expect to get as into it as I did. But yeah, and you know, for it being a debut novel and it being just sort of like a backlist, camlet kind of a book, it just kind of came out of nowhere and has really not left my thoughts since I read it. So if you're into historical fiction and particularly kind of set in that kind of time period, you must read it. Let's just put it that way. And then number 2 is the best sequel. Like many of you, I don't read a lot of sequels, but I happen to reread the sequel to The Golden Mean, which is called The Sweet Girl, and that one is centered on Aristotle's daughter. Now that one, I mean, it's the best sequel I've read just because I haven't read a lot of sequels. And upon reread, I didn't like it as much as I did the first time around. I read that a couple years ago without having read The Golden Mean. Like I just read the second book because like I found it at a library sale or whatever. And you can read them independently. You don't have to read them together at all. But I don't know, there's something about Aristotle and the way he was written that just like the magic wasn't totally there in The Sweet Girl, but I still appreciate what it was doing, and certainly like a historical kind of ancient historical fiction told from a female perspective is something I can really appreciate. It seems to be kind of a trendy thing these days with some of the books that were on the women's prize list, I think. But this is, you know, from a couple years ago. It's backlist at this point. I would highly recommend both, but you don't have to read them both. You don't have to read them in order. Okay. A new release that you haven't read yet. Well, I haven't been buying a lot of books because I'm doing the 20 books a summer thing. That was totally based on TBR. The first quarter of the year when I was offline, I was just reading from my shelves. But I did buy Daisy Jones and the Six for my husband. So I guess we can go with that as a new release that I haven't read yet. Question number 4 is most anticipated new release for the second half of the year. The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel doesn't come out till March of 2020, but I am going to be anticipating it for the entire second half of this year. So, yeah, I don't know what else to answer. I guess there is a new Nels Inc. I think it comes out in late August, but we can count that one too. But really, I'm just going to be anticipating The Mirror and the Light and probably rereading Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies sometime later this year. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment. Probably The Child Finder. I already ranted about that one in another video, so you can look that up if you wish. I'll link it below. I don't have it anymore because obviously I got rid of it at the first opportunity. Oh, that book sucked so much. You can look up the other video if you want to know more. I've also been pretty let down by the books I've picked up on the topic of social media. Recently I read How to Disappear by, I think, Akiko Bush, and I very recently read Zucked by Roger McNamee. Yeah, both, like, they're just, I don't know. I think it's me. Like, I'm looking for something really specific. I'm looking for something to finally get me off Twitter for good, I guess. I don't know. But so far, the books that I've been picking up on this subject just become too centered on the author. And it's like, yeah, I don't care about you. I want to learn more about either the tech companies behind it or sort of the sociological kind of impacts. Yeah, and I haven't found that sweet spot yet. Okay, number 6 is biggest surprise. I had a hard time with this one. I'm going to say The Order of the Day by Eric Vuillard. This was a French book, and it's about World War II. It's hard to describe. It's like these little stories, and they're true, but they're fictionalized. They're told from the perspective of actual historical figures that the author like wouldn't have had access, obviously, to their interior thoughts or anything. But I was surprised, I guess, by how applicable a lot of it was to the current day. In particular, there's one little vignette that he does about some of the German like industrialists who kind of backed Hitler as he was rising to power and like financially benefited from his rise to power and all that. And the surprising part about it was how many of those companies are still, you know, out there and dominating today, and how they really downplay that history. So ThyssenKrupp is the one that stuck with me, because after I read this book, I just like, I see it everywhere. If you know, I Googled the company name and all these locations in Edmonton show up, and I see it like on signs everywhere, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that makes you realize that history isn't, you know, like it's not really over. It's still, you know, we're still feeling the effects. This stuff is still real, and yeah, I don't know. It surprised me in that way, I guess. Favorite new author is definitely Donna Tartt. I would say, why didn't you guys tell me how good Donna Tartt was? But obviously, like, everyone has told me how good Donna Tartt is. And I haven't even read her good books that everyone loves. So yeah, Donna Tartt, What Was I Doing? What Was I Waiting For? Number 8 is Newest Fictional Crush. So this is the one where you guys, like, yeah, I know. Like, we're all adults here. Most of us are married or have partners or whatever. Like, you guys are taking it too seriously, though. Although I would like to suggest that we maybe change this in the future to author crushes, because, you know, like, maybe that's a little more realistic. And mine, obviously, is Paul Auster circa 1970. So, moving on. Question number 9 is newest favorite character. I had a tough time with this one too. I want to say Elizabeth Holmes from Bad Blood, but of course she wasn't really in Bad Blood, so yeah, I don't know. I don't really have an answer for this one. A book that made you cry. Now, a lot of you, again, maybe it's just because I'm watching a lot of men answer this, but everyone's like, oh, like, I don't cry in books, and I'm the total opposite end of the spectrum. I cry while reading, I cried while watching movies, I cry while listening to music, I cry while watching commercials, I cry when Google Photos sends me an email that says, remember this day from 5 years ago? Like, you know, I have no qualms and no, yeah, like, I cry like for anything. But I haven't had a book this year that has made me like really cry. I mean, I've cried while reading this year for sure, probably for many of the books that I've read, but I haven't had like a true ugly cry sort of situation like I've had in years previous. The closest I came probably was How to Be Alone by Jonathan Franzen while listening to him read on audio the first essay, which is called My Father's Brain, and it's an account of his father's you know, sort of descent into dementia and the end of his life. And Jonathan Franzen is not an author that often makes me very emotional, and that's one of the reasons I don't really count him as a top 3 or 5 favorite author or whatever, because he doesn't always like get to me that way. But this essay did. I was listening to it while driving, and I was definitely crying. Okay, number 11 is a book that made you happy. So, Hungover by Shaughnessy, I can never say that name, Shaughnessy Bishop Stall. I have a whole video on this, so I'll link it. It's nonfiction. It's about this guy's quest for a hangover cure, which he eventually finds and shares. And in my video that I made, I tested it out, and it works. So, like, yeah, that made me happy. I've you know, retested it, let's say, a few times, and I'm having the same experience as the author. The author talks about how he finally found this thing that worked for him, but when he talks about it with people or shares it with someone, the reaction is often like very dubious and sort of like, oh yeah, that's nice. And I'm getting the same thing when I tell people, like, yeah, so I just like take these, you know, a couple of vitamins or whatever before I go to bed and drink some water, and then I don't have a hangover the next day. People are like, oh, mm-hmm. But as someone who has suffered from horrible, debilitating hangovers, even when I was a teenager, this is like a revelation. Okay, so I mean, it can't do anything for the lack of sleep, so it's not like perfect, but it takes away the horrible physical, like the nausea and headache and body ache and all that stuff. I know it might be a placebo and all that, but anyway, I'll link to that video if you're interested. I'm telling you, it works. So that has made me very happy. Question 12 is favorite book to movie adaptation. So I recently watched The Age of Innocence, and yeah, I mean, did you guys know that Daniel Day-Lewis is a really good actor? Duh. But yeah, I had never watched it before. It is wonderful. I love Edith Wharton. I love the book. I didn't expect to love the movie because I'm like, well, this is already a perfect book. How are they going to improve upon it? And I wouldn't say they improved upon it. Books and movies are different things. So like comparing them doesn't even always make sense. But the movie was just wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous, wonderfully acted. Do watch it. Question 13 is your favorite review that you've written or favorite video that you've made. So actually my favorite video that I've made is my Vine compilation that I made in January when I was still on my, you know, booktube and book blogging and whatever break. I worked with my kids and made this Vine compilation. We love Vine. We speak to each other in Vines. We reference Vines all the time. My kids both remember when the actual app existed, even though they were like 4 and 6 years old, maybe. Like, it's crazy. We in this house have a real affinity for Vines, so I really wanted to make my own compilation. It took a long time because, as you guys know, I have no editing skills whatsoever, but we did it, and it only has like 250 views, whereas a lot of the Vine compilations we watch have millions, so I don't know what I did wrong, but, you know, check it out if you want. But as far as book videos go, I think one of the very first ones I made during my comeback in April, it was called To Creep or Not to Creep, and it was a discussion about the fact that most contemporary authors these days are extremely online, so you can find out like all sorts of stuff about them, but should you? And it's a very specific look at a case where I did that with an author, Rebecca Schumann, and I really didn't like what I found, and I felt weird and dirty after, so it's just sort of a discussion of how and why that happened, and is this something we should do as readers? So it's still something I think about all the time, and if you haven't watched it yet, I would love to hear what you think. So question 14 is the most beautiful book that you have bought or received this year. Since I haven't been buying a lot of books, I'm going to have to go with the Harry Potter illustrated editions that I am obviously reading to my children. They are very beautiful. They've got like lots of full page illustrations. They're these heavy, like glossy paper, all of that. My kids, I'm very proud of them. They're little budding book snobs because we're almost done book 3, and book 4 in this set of illustrated editions does not come out till October. So I told them, when we're done book 3, if you want, we can just get like a normal edition or get one from the library or whatever. And they said, no, we want to wait for the nice one. So yeah, good job, boys. In the immortal words of Fergie, they get it from their mama. And finally, yes, question 15 is books I need to read in 2019. Well, you guys know I'm doing this 20 books of summer thing, so that's kind of taken me right through September. And then other than that, the only thing I'm kind of planning is that I can do Victober this year. I think for various reasons I had other things going on in the last couple of years, but I do own an edition of the Pickwick Papers. Yeah, so that's a possibility. Other than that, like I said, probably rereading Hilary Mantel. But there's nothing else that I really need to get to. Yeah, so that's it. That's the mid-year book freakout tag. I didn't freak out. I think we've all remained calm. Thanks for sticking with me. I will tag people below because I didn't think about it before. So thanks for watching.